Hey everyone. So we're going to get started with some of our learning of the Swift programming language. And we're going to get started by first talking about the idea of variables. So let's get straight to it. The first thing that we're going to do is talk about how you create variables. So the first thing that I'll create is a var. And I'm going to call this number of cats for no particular reason. Number of cats is going to be a integer because I can't really have 1.5 cats or 8.3126 cats. So the way I say this is I type int, say this is going to be an integer, and then I'm going to give it a value and just say that there are 18 cats, which is admittedly a lot of cats. Now the reason that I'm using a var here is that it's possible that the number of cats I might have at any particular time could change. So I could now say that number of cats has increased and make it 19 because for whatever reason I have gained a cat. There's another concept in Swift though, and this is a type of variable that never changes. And for this, this idea where we are storing a constant value, we actually use a different term, and we're defining the variable. And so this is let. And so I'm going to create a variable. Let's say let my name equal to Mr. Weinberg. That isn't really going to change. I'm not planning on changing my name anytime soon, so I'm reasonably sure that that is not going to change, even in the course of a program. You can see if I now try to take my name and make it not Mr. Weinberg, we get a little red dot, which in a playground indicates that there's an error. And when we look at that error, it says we can't assign a new value. My name is a let constant, and it gives us this message saying if we want to just fix this, we have to change let to var to make it mutable, which means that we can actually change it. Instead of taking that fix, I don't have to take its suggestion. I can just leave that let variable there. Now, in creating this, I've actually created another type of variable, which is a string. But I didn't have to tell Swift specifically that this was a string. A string refers to text. So one thing that I could do, and probably should do, is that I should say that my name is a string, and then I set it equal to Mr. Weinberg. The type of this variable is string, and then I'm setting that variable, my name, equal to Mr. Weinberg. When you define a variable, you define its type. So you are saying what kind of information you're going to store in that variable. If I were to now go to number of cats and set that equal to too many, give Swift Playground a moment to complain. It complains because I have already said that number of cats is going to be an integer, an int. So now that I'm trying to assign a string to it, it's going to complain. So Swift requires that you be consistent. Once you've defined a variable to be a certain type, it must stay that type the entire time. Okay, there are a whole bunch of other types that we can use. One is got enough sleep. And I'm going to say that that is true because I'm feeling extra energetic today. I even went for a run, so I'm feeling pretty good. Got enough sleep equals true. Some days I get to bed a little late, so this could be false. This kind of variable that is either true or false, we actually have a type which is called bool. It's a Boolean variable, and a Boolean variable is always true or false. And so this is a really handy variable type. Again, you'll notice that initially when I set got enough sleep equals true, I didn't give it that variable type. It's a good idea in the beginning to plan for what variable you're going to use. But Swift does have the ability to figure out what type a variable has based on what you assign it, on the value you give it for the first time. This is called type inference, and if you look in our textbook, our digital textbook, you'll learn a little bit more about this. Usually, it's a good idea to get in the habit of defining what type a variable is going to be before you actually use it. So let's do one more thing. Walking onto campus today, my temperature this morning is, my temperature was 35.8 degrees Celsius. And there are a couple things that I want to say about this. First thing, it's important. I always think it's a good idea when you give a number to give units that come with it. So I'm going to put 2 slashes and create what's called a comment. And so I'm going to put that this is degrees Celsius. It's capitalized Celsius. It is a proper name. A comment refers to code that doesn't actually run. So it's not part of the code that the computer is going to do anything with. It's more for you as a programmer so you can keep track of what it is you're doing. You'll notice, of course, that this, I haven't defined a type. This type is another one where it's not an integer, it's not a string, it's not a bool. When you want to represent numbers that are not integers, we use a different type. This type is double. And so sometimes you run into trouble if you start doing different things with variables. So maybe now I try setting it equal to 5. I don't think there's going to be an error that pops up when I do this, because 5 can be written as 5.0. So there's no error there. But if I do say set it equal to a string, to warm. If I just write to warm, Swift Playground gives us this error because, again, I'm trying to assign a string value to a variable that has a type that is double. Okay, so I can leave that just as 5. One place that you sometimes run into trouble is when you're trying to do operations on variables. You need to make sure that the types of the variables actually match. So watch what happens here. If I take number of cats and I add it to my temperature this morning, and let's say I want to print out the value trying to add these two things together, I get this error. And this error it complains about is that I'm trying to add one number, which is an integer, and another number, which is a double. And this is important to understand. When this happens, it happens because you're trying to perform some sort of operation on two variables that don't have the same type. When you are trying to do this, you want to try to make one of the variables or all the variables that you're trying to combine using operations have the same type. So one thing I could do to make this better is I could type double around number of cats, which is going to convert this number of cats as an integer into a double variable type. And so when I run my code, we can see that it actually doesn't have a problem anymore doing this. It just adds 18 and 35.8. Oops, sorry, it adds 5 to 35.8. What did I do? Sorry, 5 to number of cats gives us 24, and it gives the result as a decimal. It gives the result as a double because right now number of cats has been converted into a double, and my temperature this morning is also a double. So it's important to kind of think about that as you go through using variable types. We'll talk more about variable operations in the next video. When I ran the code, I'll also show you that you can, in Playgrounds, click on any of these lines of code and get an idea of what it actually says, which can be really useful when you're trying to debug when something isn't actually working within your code. So that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've learned a little bit about variables today. See you soon.